Here we go!
The Nintendo Power Zone, a videocast/podcast dedicated to bring you the best in Nintendo-related topics. I'm Blooz, and I'm joined today, as always, with NyceOne 983. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. I'm ready to talk about this topic, man.
Yes, and it's a very interesting topic. It's sort of a mini segment we have for you today. But as we should all know by now, in a modern day of video game development, there's a lot of games that are crowdfunded. A lot of them have a lot more publishing issues and development issues. Some games get announced and are never heard from again. Some get delayed into years and years after their initial launch. And some are canceled altogether and never get to see the light of day. The Nintendo Switch is no exception to having these kinds of games, especially since it's the hot new pie that every gamer and their developers and their mothers want to take a crack at. And so today we'll be looking at some of these games, as well as some that we all just know absolutely nothing about. And we're going to talk about where are they now, and what can we expect when they do eventually come out. And the first game on this list, I believe, is one that was on the initial screenshot, or I guess image, that showed a bunch of the logos for games that are going to be launch window games. It is Steep by Ubisoft. I don't know about you, but I am a big fan of snowboarding games, and so I was going to get this on the PlayStation. I didn't because I heard there was going to be a Switch port, and I'm kind of upset because I want to know where it is. It's been a while. But are you familiar with Steep at all?
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting looking game. I mean, not only that, but it's an ambitious type of snowboarding game. I mean, the locales that are in the game are based on real world locations.
Yes.
It's one of the most graphically pretty games that I've ever seen Ubisoft, take a crack at. So I was actually pretty excited about this game because it is kind of an old game at this point. I believe it's 2 years old.
Yes.
And it's real dirt cheap on the PS4 right now, but it's one of those games that I was like, well, if it's coming to the Switch, maybe I'll wait, because I don't play my PlayStation 4 all that often. When I do play the games, I really just try to play like solo player experiences, like the Uncharted games or God of War games like that. But I know that Steep has like some really cool multiplayer aspects to it online. And that's the thing. I wonder if that's the reason why that game is being held back, is because the Nintendo Switch's online infrastructure hasn't yet launched, and that might be the reason why they're holding back on a game like that. Simply because our paid service doesn't launch until September, so Ubisoft's like, the best way to experience this game, in a multiplayer aspect, is to have a really good online infrastructure, and I don't think Nintendo could deliver on that just yet.
Got it. I think it's also interesting that the developers of Steep over at Ubisoft recently finished a DLC for the 2018 Winter Olympics, and they've been working on that for a while. They also helped plan the events, or like part of the ceremonies, I guess. Like they had a tournament, a Steep tournament, I believe, and stuff, and so that was pretty cool to see. But They mentioned during the development of this DLC that, so we know we promised the Switch port, but for right now, our priority is just finishing this DLC in the main game on the other systems that we already have, but do not fret, it is coming. And so that makes it sound to me that it's still not yet done porting, which you would think after how long the Switch has been out, how long Steep has been out, shouldn't be that hard to port. But I don't know. Maybe it is the online thing. That is a very good theory. But nonetheless, I'm really hoping this gets released fairly soon. So next on the list here, nonetheless, it was a very beautiful looking game when we saw it a while ago. It was announced with a trailer ages and ages and ages ago. At this point, it feels like, and it just gone quiet. We didn't know much to begin with. We still don't know much now. It's called Seasons of Heaven. I think a lot of you guys may have seen the trailer for it way back when it dropped, like December of 2016. It was shortly after we got the Switch announcement video in October. And a lot of people are saying that it's like, oh, it's not even a game. They just wanted to draw attention to it because it's like, they wanted to jump off the Switch hype bandwagon. So we don't know if we even saw gameplay. It kind of looked like some of it might have been gameplay, some of it might have been just the trailers for it. I don't know, but it looked very weird. The story itself is based off of a book, and it follows a autistic, I believe, young boy and a dog. as they go about this. I don't want to say post-apocalyptic world, but I believe it's a kind of post-apocalyptic world that they're set in. Although from the trailer we would not get that. It seems very, very peaceful, very, very surreal and beautiful. So yeah. Any thoughts on what we could see from this? Do you think it was just announced to draw hype to the studio or to the book? Or do you think we might get it eventually, or what?
I honestly forgot about this game altogether, but I'm actually rewatching the trailer right now, and this is one of the most graphically intensive games that it looks like was announced for the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And this almost looks like a PS4 rendering, so I'm wondering if the development engine might be just a little too much for the Switch to handle piecemeal. So they probably had to just do it all in segments or just adapt the engine so that it would properly work on the Switch.
Maybe.
But this trailer does look good. I do like the whole serenity aspect of the game. That's something that, we typically don't see in gamings unless, they're indie games. A lot of the indie games like to tackle stuff like this, and never really heard of Any Arts Productions, so I don't know what their development staff is like. So this might be one of those situations where they announced something a little too soon.
I think it was too ambitious to announce it this early. Yeah,
but it does look good.
It looks very beautiful, like you've said. It looks very beautiful. You're right. It might be a bit too intensive for the Switch. I was thinking like they're pushing the Switch, if anything, but it might be over what the Switch can do. You might be right there. But nonetheless, I hope that we at least hear something soon, because this is a game that I want to know more about, because it does look so beautiful. It is something we've never seen before. I haven't read the book, and maybe I should, but so seeing this, I want to know more. At least I want to know if we will get it. I want to know what it's about. This is one of those things that just asks so many questions of us and gives us no answers.
This is one of those games that I see winning like one of those Impact Awards at the Game Awards. It has that kind of vibe to it.
It could, if it's done right.
But this is one of those. I really expect a game like this, on the PS4 or the Xbox 3, or the Xbox One. Not really like a Switch out. And maybe that's another reason why it's not on the Switch. It doesn't really necessarily fit the Nintendo mold, and even with indie developers, Nintendo does try to get developers that fit within the Nintendo mold. That's the reason why Shovel Knight got such a huge push, is because it fits the Nintendo mold. And this game necessarily doesn't do that. It's definitely one of these games that's aimed at probably a more mature audience. There we go.
I think it's one of those games that will be aimed at a mature audience because it has some sort of mature undertones. Like, I want to compare it to a game like Rhyme, and Rhyme was kind of pushed for the Switch as well. But I don't think Rhyme had as much mature undertones. I'm actually I'm stuck on a puzzle in Rhyme currently, so I can't say I've beaten it or anything. It's still with the ball that controls the sun and the moon. I can't figure it out, and it's really frustrating. And I refuse to look it up, so whatever. But so I didn't see much in the way of mature undertones, and I feel like this is the game, like I've said, it seems on surface very kid-friendly, very surreal, a young boy and his dog, but apparently, from what I've read, it's set in a post-apocalyptic world where a lot of people are dying. And so I think there's going to be, those dark undertones in there are very present. And I think, but the way it presents itself gameplay-wise, or right now, it feels very Rhyme to me. And I think that is probably the reason why it has the vibes that it gives off, but I don't think it's necessarily something that Nintendo wouldn't put into their categories of, their mold.
Well, that might be another reason. Rhyme hasn't done too well on the Switch, considering, and there was a lot of controversy behind Rhyme, so
yeah.
It might just be that maybe Nintendo doesn't want to take the risk on another game that might be similar to Rhyme. Maybe they want to invest in indie games that might make a larger mark. And it looks, based on what Rhyme did, I don't see Rhyme having made a large impact on the game industry as a whole.
No, I agree, but I think games like Rhyme could. I think games that are played similarly, look similarly, feel similarly to Rhyme, they could. Rhyme just didn't do it. So I think
Yeah,
seasons have
absolutely.
been, you said you saw it winning an Impact Award. Rhyme obviously didn't win an Impact Award, but games like it have, I believe, in the past. So,
Well, there was that one game where not from last year, but the year before, and I hate that I forgot the name. That was showing how this family dealt with their son being stricken with cancer, and that was a pretty impactful game, and that won that Impact Award at the Game Awards. So, yeah, maybe games like this that bring awareness to certain things. I think those games should be played by all, but
yeah.
I mean, it's what Nintendo allows on their eShop, and sometimes they're pretty strict on what makes it and what doesn't.
Fair enough. But then moving on, we have yet another Ubisoft title. And this one is kind of a Skylanders like amiibo sort of feel to it. It was released, I believe announced at Ubisoft E3 last year. Starlink Battle for Atlas. It looks very fun. Looks kind of cool. I'll probably pick it up if the toys for it aren't too expensive. That's my big issue with those kinds of things at this point. I don't have the space to want them, and if I don't have the money, I definitely shouldn't. My amiibo collection's way too big at this point. It is. I had to sell so many just because I don't have the space for them, and it sucks. Because I want all my amiibo. I just don't have the space for them.
I have a bunch of storage. But yeah, man, this game actually had me really hyped during Ubisoft presser.
Yeah.
It looks good, and I know the thing is that what we saw during E3, those were prototypes, and those aren't finished product.
No.
I mean, but from what I could see, those things look good. They look really good. What's cool about the Switch is the built-in NFC. You don't need no stupid Skylanders like Portal.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was a really ambitious-looking game. And the fact that it's a multi-platform title, it's weird that we haven't heard anything about it since E3, and we're coming up on a year when that game was announced. I mean, E3 is literally right around the corner. We're basically like 2 months away from it, so 8 weeks before E3, rolls around. I thought we'd hear something, especially because of Ubisoft's penchant to have massive leaks. This seems like a game that would have been on almost everybody's radar who likes Toys to Life. But maybe that's the reason why a lot of Toys to Life games have gone under in the last, 2 years or so. I mean, Disney Infinity pulled out. Skylanders is like MIA, and Lego dropped out of the Toys to Life pretty quickly as well. I think the only Toys to Life left are Amiibo, and they don't typically fit the standard Toys to Life mold because, there's no specific Amiibo game. Amiibo work with a variety of games, unlike the traditional Toys to Life games.
And just to mention Skylanders for a second, I don't think they're necessarily MIA. I think they're just done with Skylanders. I think we got that copyright for the next 5 series entries, and Imagineers was the last one. There aren't any after that. Is my theory with that.
I don't imagine that because they're running a Netflix show based on Skylanders right now.
Skylanders Academy.
That season, the second season, only came out a few months ago, so I don't feel like they're ready to let that license go anytime soon. I think maybe they realize they need to let it sit and then refresh it.
Maybe.
Because those annual releases, and that can't be. First off, that's not sustainable. I mean, the Call of Duty model doesn't work in this way because at least with the Call of Duty model, there are different studios developing those Skylander games. I mean, those Call of Duty games. So every 2 or 3 games, a different studio will pick up the next generation.
Yeah. And
Skylanders, it was the same team.
But nonetheless, we're all caught up on that initial copyright, is my main point. We don't know what's going to come next. I don't think they really know either. They might make more, but maybe not for a while. Okay, agreed there. But so Starlink Battle for Atlas, going back to that, sorry about that weird tangent. It was a sort of space exploration, I don't say shoot 'em up, it's not a shoot 'em up, it's sort of like Star Fox, in terms of Star Fox 64, almost, it seems. But looks a lot more creative and interesting due to the NFC functions, letting you to modify your ship and stuff. as you play, which looked kind of cool. The environments look very interesting, very cool. Story doesn't seem too great, but there does seem to be a story. But I'm excited for it nonetheless. I think we might hear from it again at E3. Whether they made a lot of progress or a little bit of progress, I don't know. But I'm assuming we're gonna get a bit more. At E3.
I'm pretty sure this game is a little bit more ambitious than I initially thought. I think this game not only is cross-platform, but I think it might be a cross-play game.
I think so.
The online aspect of it, and if it's a cross-play game, that might be the reason why we've heard very little, because we all know that it's really hard to get these three major console makers to
agree to this,
work together.
Yeah,
we can't even play Rocket League with PS4 players. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's iffy. Unfortunately, getting them all to agree on these online plays is cross-play is iffy. But this is more of a broad category next on the list here. A lot of people have been requesting it. We actually don't even really know if it's happening, to be honest. But it just seems like such a given that we should. It's Virtual Console. We know that we're getting the NES games with online multiplayer when the online multiplayer launches as a paid subscription in September. We don't know about an actual Virtual Console to get games, however, such as Super NES games, N64 games, maybe even GameCube. We have like the Neo Geo stuff, and we have, I believe now, they're Game Boy games, right? Currently on there, but other than that, I don't.
Game Boy Advance as well.
Yeah. So I don't think it's smart of them to release not release the Virtual Console and just maybe stick with the online. I think maybe they want to not. I think they're going to expand from just NES games in the future, the paid online. I think they're going to run out of the NES games they can put online into very quickly, and they might expand into some other consoles in the future. But as it currently stands, it's not necessarily something that Nintendo should forget. I think the Neo Geo games and stuff that's on the eShop currently need a proper home as well. And so I think Virtual Console is something that should just be a given at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
I have a theory that we're not going to see the Virtual Console. I think Virtual Console may have run its course on the previous two consoles, and Nintendo seems pretty happy with the classic consoles as a way for them to release the games that they know are guaranteed to sell. The problem with Virtual Console is, you could put they put hundreds of games on Virtual Console. But what are the games that are selling the most? Super Mario, Donkey Kong, all the games that we see on the NES Classic. I'm pretty sure Nintendo's done thorough market research, just so they could figure out which games to put on the Classic Edition systems. That's why we saw the games that we saw, because these were the games that were selling, plus a mix of like oddball games that were nostalgic in different ways, like games like Balloon Fight. I can guarantee you that Balloon Fight doesn't necessarily sell in Virtual Console, but you throw it in a package system like the NES Classic, and you can push out Balloon Fight, or you can push out these oddball games or these harder games like Ghouls and Ghosts. I think the Virtual Console is a dead concept, and Nintendo has found a way to circumvent that with the NES Classic and the Super NES Classic and whatever classic systems they have down the pipeline. I think it's a far more lucrative prospect for them, because look at it. Both the Super NES Classic and the NES Classic editions have sold like gangbusters. They're making money off of this. So do they necessarily need the Virtual Console? Probably not. It might feel like a loss to tradition gamers who want to play these games on their Switch, but I think Arcade Archives is doing a pretty good job of getting some of these more classic arcade games and throwing them on the Switch. I know we have Punch Out coming sometime in the near future, so I don't think we're losing anything by not having the Virtual Console. And hey, if Nintendo doesn't want to make the money off of it, Neo Geo is doing fantastic right now with all their releases. They're filling a niche that Nintendo doesn't quite want to fill right now.
I very much disagree with a lot of that. I think you're right. Being able to push games through the NES and NES Classics, minis, and whatever, is very good. But I feel like that's not the solution to a more underlying problem that Nintendo faces in terms of just like pirated emulators and ROMs that need to be cracked down on for their end. If you're going to crack down on emulators and ROMs, it's because you want to make the money on these games that you're not necessarily selling in stores anymore. Having like Pokemon on a virtual console, everyone goes to these emulators and ROMs for Pokemon games. It's like the biggest ones they always do. And if they want to crack down on that, they should release it so that people have a viable option to buy them, other than like a used copy at GameStop that no one wants to pay for. I think the big issue is maybe combating piracy through emulators more so than the sales. I think that would be a nice solution to that. But also, once again, I think at this point, there's no reason not to. I feel like it should be very easy to port these virtual console titles. At least most of them they have previously ported. I think it should be, what's the word? It shouldn't be too hard to make, and there's no reason not to try and make money off of it. Like, why not? As well as it's harder to find, the NES Classic and Super NES Classic. If you're not going to produce as many as you want to make profits for, you should release Virtual Console. If you're going to make it hard to find, no one's going to buy it. Well, there's the diehards who will buy it. But then releasing one digital thing to the eShop, having it sell, $1 million or less or whatever, depending on the game, having it just upload a file to the eShop, have it sell, is so much easier than producing a physical system and not making enough and then canceling it before you make all of your profits on it.
Maybe so, but that physical system is retailing at $60. And even though they probably make more money digitally, it's that physical package, man. They just get so much out of it, and they're selling these things, man. I just don't see why they would move away from a system that's working, even though it might not be the best solution as far as like these retro games are concerned. This is actually working for Nintendo, and I think that's the strange thing is because it's working. There's no hardcore desire to bring these games over, and on top of that, a lot of the games that they want to bring over, the ones that they said would have online functionality, those games need to be tweaked. So now we're looking at 30-plus-year-old coding and trying to figure out how to put those games in an altered fashion on this new virtual console type system that they want to do. I think it's a little bit of everything, but I honestly think the fact that the NES Classic and Super NES Classic exist, it's not really giving them any incentive to bring a traditional virtual console over.
All right. I think you've convinced me to be at a weird 50-50 where they don't need to pour as much resources, but I feel like it should still be a thing. I think it's smart for them to have. Why lose on an easy profit? I understand that you're getting profits from the NES Classics, but I feel like why not do both just so you have the full range of the ability to get the profits? People who want them digitally, people want them on the Switch, and people who want the physical bundle for $60.
Oh, I 100% agree that the virtual console should exist in some fashion on the Switch.
You just don't think they will?
I just don't see them having the true incentive. And Nintendo's always been weird. Like, Nintendo does what Nintendo does, and sometimes gamers be damned. We don't necessarily always have a choice in how we get a product from Nintendo. They're very similar to Apple in that way. Mm-hmm. They kind of tell us what we want versus us allowing us to decide what we want.
Okay, yeah. But so we've talked enough about the virtual console here. We're going to talk about another game that's kind of retro looking. It's called Pocket Rumble. It was one of the very, very, very first games to be announced for the Switch after the sort of like big, what was it, like the January event, whatever it was, right? January, February?
Yeah, it was the January presentation.
Presentation, that's the word for it. Thank you. It's called Pocket Rumble. It's an indie fighting game. It had released on the PC in February, I believe, of the same year. And they had like demos of it working on the Switch, they said. And it was going to be like at the end of March, I believe. And then it got onto the Nindies, the very first, I believe, or maybe the second Nindies video. and it was set for, I believe, summer, and now it's still not here. It's developed by Cardboard Robot Games as well as published by, I believe, Chucklefish. Chucklefish has done, Stardew Valley, that Terraria-looking Starbound, yeah, that's what it's called. They do a lot of work at Chucklefish. And so to see this sort of go quiet, it was all set for the Switch. It went quiet. Chucklefish has stated that Cardboard Robots has run into issues. They won't say what the issues are, but it is still coming. This looks like a very fun fighting game. Looks very simple. I think it will work. It's probably going to be the best fighting game that will work with just a single sideways Joy-Con. If there's any fighting game that will make it work, yeah, it would be this one, of course. It's based off like 2-button fighters from the Neo Geo, I believe. And it looks very fun, very creative. And it's sort of a shame to see it vanish, especially since it already came out on PC a while ago at this point. I believe a year and a couple months at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fusion of, those Neo Geo Pocket Color games, fighter games, Street Fighter, and Scott Pilgrim. If you fuse those three properties together, you get Pocket Rumble. And it's a very interesting looking fighting game. And rewatching the trailer, I haven't seen this trailer since last year. This was a pretty ambitious fighting game, and it was so simple that I figured it would be on the Switch immediately. I don't know what the holdup would be. Maybe it's licensing that could be the major issue. And what I mean by licensing is maybe they took too many aspects, like from a Neo Geo thing, and there could be something going on there where Neo Geo's like, hey, this is too similar to our stuff. Or maybe it's because of the whole flood of Neo Geo stuff that we don't see this game released, because with all these Neo Geo games that keep getting ported to the Switch, it would be easy for this game to get lost amongst all those.
I would agree there, yeah. But it's kind of a shame, especially since it had its window of opportunity, I guess, before it got flooded with Neo Geo fighting games. Well, it was still fresh on PC back in the launch window of the Switch. That's when it probably would have done the best, generated the most hype, and there wasn't as much competition. And so not sure it will do as well. I'm agreeing. It lost its window, definitely. But hopefully we at least see it soon. I'm still planning on picking it up if it does come out.
Well, the problem I have right now is the further and further we get away from this, from that release trailer or launch trailer, is the less I care about it, because now there are more fighting games coming to the Switch. Obviously, Smash just got announced. We had that fighting game that was that was just announced as that indie game that was just announced. Something Fist. That game looks.
Oh
really
yeah. Good. I forgot what it's called as well. Oh well.
Yeah. That game looks really good, and obviously we have SNK Heroines on the way.
Yes, which is King of Fighters.
Exactly. So the more we get away from it, the less I care, because now there's a plethora of other fighting games that are filling the niche market that this game would have fit into, and I almost feel bad for them, because you're right, they missed out on a huge window of opportunity, and now the market is being flooded. And as we said in the last episode, the Switch is slowly becoming the console that you go to if you want a dedicated fighting game.
But so I guess that's it for Neo Geo Pocket Rumble. Not Neo Geo, but very similar. Next up we have WarioWare, and I think I might have goofed. I'm taking another look at what we have for it, and I'm actually not sure if it might say, I can't get a proper zoom. The logo is kind of weird. It might say Wario World. I don't think so though. I think it's still WarioWare. But so in the original screenshot of the launch window games, right in between Wonder Boy, Cave Story, and Hollow Knight, we have a logo for Wario, I believe not World, WarioWare 7. And I believe I mentioned in the episode where we talked about the Direct, I wanted, if we got a port of the WarioWare games or a new 3DS WarioWare, I would have wanted it to be like this, as follows: WarioWare DIY 2, because DIY was amazing, and then a collection on the Switch, or this WarioWare 7. I think it was weird that we got the collection coming to 3DS at all, honestly. But WarioWare, this is a launch window game. It's sitting in the 2017 category. It's now 2018. We don't have it. Granted, there are a lot of games that are listed here that we don't. Like what? Steep is still listed here. We obviously did not get that. What else is listed here? We have, there's, I can't actually tell what else, but there's a couple of games in the 2017 category that are not here yet. I can't read a lot of these logos is the big issue. Because I can't find a good zoom image of this sort of section, which really frustrates me.
Well, there was a little piece of news that came out today, this morning.
Okay, I just woke up, so.
Nintendo filed a trademark for a Wario Land game.
Okay.
So that was pretty much, like, I've been up since, like, crack of dawn. So that was one of the first things I saw this morning was that a Wario Land game was trademarked. That's the thing with Nintendo and trademarks, though. Sometimes they trademark things just to secure titles, which is, smart. Sometimes they trademark things to secure patents. We never know, but there is a glimmer of hope for Wario fans because there is, a game somewhere being shuffled around at Nintendo. As far as what it is, though, since it was a Wario Land trademark, it makes me think that this is more of a traditional Wario style game. We really haven't had one of those since
the Game Boy era.
Oh, really? The Wii? Yeah, okay. Wario Land Shake It.
I guess, yeah. I thought that was more. All right, yeah. Fair enough then. Sure.
I mean, even though it's a motion, control Wario game, it still fits into that mold of you're right. Side-scroller Wario games that Wario spun out of since Super Mario Land 2.
Yeah.
So interesting development. That we just got. I don't know what's going to happen with that. We should keep an eye on it because we never know. That might be something that gets pushed out at E3, and that's why they're pushing that trademark now so that they can show it at E3.
Probably, yeah, but it just seems weird that like this is you would think that they would, if they're going to mark it in the 2017 window, that it would be where it would have details sooner, or they would get it out sooner or something. But I don't know. But you also said it says WarioWare in the picture as well, so I don't know.
Well, I think with that launch picture that they showed. I think that was just to show what teams would be developing games. So like, we all know Nintendo's broken down into smaller teams, and there's a team that handles the Wario, there's a team that handles Mario, there's a team that handles Yoshi, etc., etc. I think that was more of the Wario team is working on something. It could be a traditional Wario game, it could be more of a WarioWare type game, but this team is actively developing for the Switch, and it might just be that maybe they started a WarioWare game, but it's not just that, but Miyamoto says, Miyamoto always has like final say, and Miyamoto doesn't like it when franchises become stagnant. Hence the reason Paper Mario has gotten so weird over the years. It might just be that Miyamoto said, "You've done enough WarioWare games. Let's get back into this side-scrolling space." Especially since Mario has shifted away from the side-scrolling space. Maybe they want a more traditional Mario-type character to get into that space.
Maybe. Okay, fair enough. But we will have to wait and see whatever this Wario game or two Wario games end up being. I'm excited to see them nonetheless. But next up on the list is a kind of really big one, especially if you're over in Japan. It's Dragon Quest XI, which was one of the, if not the first, third-party game announced for the Switch. Dragon Quest is huge. It's a great RPG, but it does so well in Japan. Not as much here in the US, but it sells like hotcakes in Japan. Not a lot of them get localized, unfortunately, as well, which is usually an issue, unfortunately. But Dragon Quest XI looks absolutely phenomenal. Really, really great. We still haven't gotten, I believe it was Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2 on the West. I believe they did release in the Japan and Asia. However, I I want my Dragon Quest games. RPGs are really at home in portable consoles, but I also feel like RPGs do better when there's more grand, which would be fit for like a PlayStation or a TV system. And so RPGs are really, really at home here on the Switch. Dragon Quest is super, super hype, super important in the market, and I'm really waiting for it. So it's kind of weird that we haven't gotten much. I know that obviously Dragon Quest games are usually pretty quiet, which is very unfortunate. Especially here in the West. They always are quiet. And once again, really frustrating. What do you think here?
Well, aside from, I don't think this game is coming to Western areas just because Dragon Quest development, first off, it takes a long time for them to make a game. It takes an even longer time for them to localize the game. So it takes us forever to see those games here. But I think Square announced this game a little too soon. Before they had any real specifications on the Switch, I think they ambitiously announced this thinking that the Switch would be maybe more on par with the PS4, Xbox One vanilla versions. I think it's a safe bet to say that the PS4 and Xbox One vanilla versions are still a little bit more powerful than the Switch is currently, but I think they just got ambitious. The same thing happened with Sega and Sonic Forces. They announced Sonic Forces for the NX before they had any real idea what the NX was. And as you can see it, you can see in the development that Sonic Forces was a little bit too much for the Switch to handle, or maybe even if it wasn't too much for the Switch to handle, Sega wasn't ready to release this game for the Switch, and you can tell with the lackluster port that the Switch got. I think Square is a better developer in the sense that they're like, okay, so this isn't what we thought it was going to be. It's going to take us time. We're going to have to figure out how to make this happen. And I think the same can be said about Final Fantasy 15. They actively said that they would like to put it on Switch, but because of what the Switch is, it might have to take some, graphical hits. So we have to actively develop a version for it for the Nintendo Switch.
It's Final Fantasy 15 is actually highly implied to be coming to the Switch at some point. It is what they said is a hot new system that rhymes with Twitch. That's what they officially said. We don't know it's coming to the Switch or not. We know it's coming to a hot new system that rhymes with Twitch. So I wouldn't make that claim just yet. But so yeah, I agree. Square Enix, these games, RPGs in general, take a long, long time to make. Persona 5 was going to come to the PlayStation 3 back when the PlayStation 3 was a thing, and it got pushed back. They worked on it for so long. It released last year. RPGs take a long, long time. Final Fantasy games always take a while. We're getting Kingdom Hearts 3, still not yet. RPGs take a very long time, and that's a great thing you pulled that up. I think maybe we might get it sometime in the West, but I think it might be a next-gen thing where we get the Western port. I think what they might do is they're going to let it run its course in Japan. They might re-release it, and at that point, they're able to get the port going as a re-release. So similar to what we got with the 3DS and Journey of the Cursed Kings and the other one, which I'm forgetting. But 7 and 8, I believe, is what they were that we got. And I think, they might see something like that where we get it years and years later in the West, maybe. But by that time, I think the Switch will be long gone, unfortunately. But that might be a way to look at it. But Square is a good developer. We got Octopath Traveler on the way. They've been supporting it with I Am Setsuna and Lost Sphere as well. And like we've said, we are assuming it's coming to the Switch, but Final Fantasy 15 may be on the way. But yeah. Next on the list, though, is a new Monolith Soft game. This isn't necessarily a game that was really announced or we were really expecting or has gone quiet. It was never allowed to begin with. Monolith, the story here is that, sometime during these, Blade Chronicles 2 development cycle, I guess, we were told, what we weren't even told. Monolith Soft posted a job listing for young new developers to help work on a new, brand new game. We saw a little bit of concept art on the page for the hiring site. It looked very fantasy-like, very different from what we've seen the Xenoblade games in recent years. But it looked very cool. We saw I think on an Angel Wings statue or something. And so what we know what this means is that they are working on a new game. We can expect them to be outputting a lot of new stuff, probably because they're hiring more. We're probably haven't seen Monolith Soft splitting a bit of development cycles while one team was finishing up Xenoblade 2. They've probably already started this new game, and now that the new game's being made, we might expect a split team where they're going to work on the new game, and these guys over here are going to start maybe another Xenoblade game or something. And that is great because Monolith Soft games are always fantastic. It's always impressive how they've been able to push these games out, which is really cool. But we know that we can expect yet another new Monolith Soft game, and that's pretty much it.
I'm looking at this game, and I have this thought that this is Monolith Soft's attempt at a traditional Final Fantasy game. The artwork itself that they have here, and I haven't seen it since this job listing went up, but the artwork just straight up gives me Final Fantasy vibes, and I'm talking Final Fantasy anywhere between 1 and 6 vibes. And I think that's what they're doing. The problem is that Monolith Soft is a developer that is extraordinarily stretched thin. They have become the go-to developer whenever somebody needs a hand. So they actively worked on Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
They actively worked on Splatoon. Mm-hmm. I think they actually had a hand in developing a couple of smaller games for the Switch. What came out last year?
I mean,
Mario Odyssey. They've actively been, sending developers
mm-hmm.
away. It's amazing that they finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when
not
they
only
did.
as fast, as quickly as they did, but that it was as polished and good as it was as well.
And they did that with a team of 40 in-house developers. But there was a lot of outsourcing for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Square Enix did all the character models for the main villains in the game, whose name escapes me. Nope. Yeah, was it Tarantia? Nope. Basically, all the bad guys were developed at Torna. Yeah, all the Torna character models were developed at Square Enix. So, and if you look at those characters, they have a very Square, vibe to them.
They do. Jin especially.
Oh, especially he's essentially Sephiroth.
Yeah,
he looks like a younger, hipper version of Sephiroth.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see where they outsourced for Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they had to hire young, ambitious, programmers that just shows that they're a developer that's stretched pretty thin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect to see this game for maybe 3 years.
I would say that's a safe bet. I would like to see it sooner, at least details. But I think it's probably going to take 3 years or more. Microsoft games are very big, but they have proven that they can shoot things out, very quickly, which is always impressive. So I would not be surprised if we saw it fairly early, and it was really good because they have done this in the past. However, looking at just normal means, and if they are now back to a normal spot, they're calming down after being stretched so thin after with the Switch launch, they can sort of get things back right. It can take their time. I think might be also a good thing. But I think it's going to take 3 or 4 years ish. They could put it out sooner if they're really, really doing their magic. But so next, we have a app. It's a weirder app. We have a couple more apps on this list actually, but this is the weirdest one by far. It's for a product called Rainway. Rainway, and Rainway is a weird sort of streaming app that looks very, very promising. And if it does look this promising, I don't know where I'm going with this, but if it works, it'll be absolutely amazing. Let's leave it at that. So Rainway is a streaming app that could allow the Switch to take games from your Steam library and using your computer specs, stream those games to the Switch with supposedly no latency. And you could use multiple different kinds of controllers. I believe you could use the Joy-Cons if you'd want, or you could use the mouse and keyboard if you want. But the big draw to this, especially with the Switch, is that it'll be released for other systems. You could put your PC game onto your Xbox or PlayStation or something, and it would play with no latency. That's cool. But with this, you could start playing on your TV, and then someone wants to take over the TV, and you can put it onto the portable mode and play it around the house, like in your bed or something. And playing a game like Nier Automata, everyone's talking about PUBG, Overwatch, Fortnite. There's a lot of great games that are like PC, or maybe even Sea of Thieves just launched for Xbox and PC, stuff like that. You could virtually have the settings cranked up on your computer if computer can handle it, stream it to either your TV on the Switch, on the portable Switch, and it would be a great experience. It wouldn't obviously be the same thing, but 4K on the computer, stream it to your Switch, and it's really cool to see. We were told it would be on the eShop, so it's not something that we would have to hack our Switch to download off a sketchy site or anything. It's supposedly going to be released on the eShop. Rainway is currently in beta for select few platforms. I believe it's only mobile, only iPhone, iOS, and some other weird device. But it seems very promising just because of what it's capable of and the fact it promises no latency. But yeah, any thoughts?
This is a licensing nightmare. That's why it's not on the Switch. Because of what it does, there is no way that Nintendo allows this to happen without putting up a fight. The ability to play games from an alternate platform like the Xbox or the PlayStation, that in and of itself is a licensing nightmare. And I don't see a lot of, the bigger companies allowing this to happen. There's no way you're going to be able to play a Microsoft game that isn't Minecraft on the Switch. They're not going to allow that. Same applies for Sony. And the other half of that is Nintendo doesn't want that. So even though it's cool, it's Steam capable, essentially. That's essentially what it is. It's just running Steam. That in and of itself makes it a difficult sell. And I just don't see Nintendo allowing that to happen. Even no matter how much, we may want that, Nintendo would. I just see them blocking access left and right. This game, we didn't license this game. We don't want it on our platform.
Yeah.
To make a game on the Switch is an arduous process on any Nintendo console. You have to get Nintendo's approval to release a game on their system. This is a way to circumvent that, and I see Nintendo saying hell no to this. Just outright saying hell no.
Yeah, that's what we would think, but the developers were very, very confident when they said it will be on the eShop, as well as it will be on the PlayStation Store and the Xbox Store as well. And so they seem very confident when they say that, which draws the attention where it should be. Will they really allow this?
Well, that's more of a thing where it's how do I say it? When they say that, I feel like that's them trying to force studios' hands. Hey, Nintendo, hey, Microsoft, hey, Sony, we put this out there to force your hand. And if you say no, you look like the bad guy. I think that's one of the oldest tricks in the book. Okay. And I just think maybe these companies are saying, hey, you trying to play us and we're not going to allow that. Because of it, like I said, it's literally a way to circumvent all these licensing issues that they would have otherwise.
Yeah. Got it. All right, but that's sort of the spiel on Rainway. It's very interesting. If it does see the light of day on these systems, it'll be very, very cool. However, it does seem very iffy, as well as we're still in a very, very early beta for it. But so Retro Studios is working on a very, mysterious type kind of title. And so this game, I don't know what to think. We don't know anything about it. We know that they're making a game, and so there's a lot of speculation that we don't know what to do. And so we just don't know anything.
Retro has been working on this game for about 5 years, so pretty much when they finished Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and I honestly think that this is them trying to finish their Donkey Kong trilogy, but I think the way they're trying to do it is with a Donkey Kong 64-esque type game, which would require them to be making a 3D open world Donkey Kong game. And I know a lot of people are like, no, why a Donkey Kong game? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Metroid is actively being developed by a different studio. And I honestly think that Retro should get a chance to finish their Donkey Kong trilogy. And I'm hoping it's with an open world game. They've done the side-scrolling thing with Donkey Kong, and they've been successful at it. They've made 2 amazing Donkey Kong side-scrollers, and one of them is being ported to the Switch, and I think now is the time for them to take Donkey Kong into the 3D space and just cap off their trilogy with one big open-world Donkey Kong game. Let them finish the trilogy, and I bet you when it does get announced, when it does come out, it's going to look fantastic. And if it's not Donkey Kong, then they're working on some other low-tier Nintendo property, and it'll be a huge shakeup. Don't be surprised if they're coming out with their version of Kid Icarus. I mean, they had at one point pitched a Kid Icarus title to Nintendo. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come out of the ashes.
Okay, that could be interesting. Yeah, it's actually, as you were finishing up the Donkey Kong spiel, maybe Kid Icarus. So that's what popped in my head as well. Okay, hear me out. Retro Studios Paperboy.
Oh Lord,
that would be something. I want Paperboy in Smash. That's my top choice. Is Paperboy at this point. So Paperboy and Retro Studios' new Paperboy game is totally a thing you should expect soon. But so next is they're a very tried and true developer, especially for Nintendo. Level 5. They've done the Professor Layton games. They did an awesome 3DS game called Fantasy Life. They are doing Yokai Watch actively, I believe now. They've made a Japanese 3DS title called Snack World recently. And so these last 2 are the 2 big ones I want to talk about. Yokai Watch 3 was released ages ago at this point in Japan. We believed it was probably getting localized. We actually never had any real confirmation. However, at this point, we might assume that they're making it for the Switch now. We don't know. But so Yokai Watch is Level 5's current moneymaker. It makes so much money for Level 5 at this point. It's just dumb for them to not release it. Obviously, it is more popular in Japan. But we know, going back to Snack World was released in Japan only on the 3DS. We were supposed to have gotten it, I believe, not this summer, but sometime 2017/early 2018 in the West. I don't think it came out. It might just have under my radar, but I think it did not come out. But then I have a Japanese account on my Switch, so I could get Monster Hunter Double Cross. And even though I don't want to, I got a bunch of the Japanese eShop news and stuff. And so I saw that Snack World is coming to Switch. I don't know the details. I don't read Japanese, but it was clearly a Switch port of Snack World. And so, okay, well, now you're porting it to the Switch. What happened to the English release of the 3DS version, And so you kind of have to look at that trend. Maybe they canned the 3DS version in favor of a Switch port. That they will then release the Switch port in English. And Yokai Watch 3 has been around long enough that we might assume the same thing. But I think it's a very wrong move if they don't give us Yokai Watch 3 on the Switch at this point, especially when they're giving us a Snack World Switch port. Any thoughts on these games?
My problem with Level 5 is Yokai Watch, as much as Nintendo pushes it here in the West, it's not Pokemon. It's not.
I don't think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be its own thing. People just have lopped it into that category, despite.
Well, I think it's supposed to be within that same kind of niche that Pokemon fills, but
it's the collecting RPG.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is that competitors to the Pokemon franchise, they have to do something. They have to be unique. Well, I don't necessarily think they fail. I think the most successful Pokemon competitor would be Yu-Gi-Oh, and I mean that had its day in the sun as well. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh was really popular right after Pokemon, and it was a different take on the whole collecting and
cards.
Yeah, exactly. It was a whole different take on that style of gameplay where you have to collect something, and then there's a whole game aspect to it. With Yokai Watch, first off, I think it skews even younger than Pokemon. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
It skews younger than Pokemon. But here in the West, Pokemon players
are getting older.
Well, not just that they're getting older. They've always been older. They have always been older. Like, even though that game is marketed to a younger demographic in Japan, it has always skewed a little bit older in America because of all the reading and whatnot.
Okay, yeah.
With Yokai Watch, because it skews younger, but when it gets localized, that it doesn't skew up the same way that Pokemon does. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't scale up to the American counterpart.
That makes sense.
And I think that's why it's not successful here. Is that when we look at Yokai Watch, we don't know what the hell a yokai is, and B, the game looks more child friendly than Pokemon does.
Okay, yeah, I see that being the issue. Yeah.
So even when they release these games here in the States, they don't capture the imagination here in the West that it does in Japan. I also think that Yokai Watch might just be in the wrong platform.
Maybe.
And as much as I would hate to lose level 5 as a developer for any Nintendo console, those games would probably work better in the mobile space.
Maybe.
Outside of that, I mean, the Layton games do well, and
Layton games yeah.
I appreciate the Layton series. They fill a genre that Nintendo themselves hasn't really touched until recently with Detective Pikachu.
Yes.
And even Detective Pikachu is like a light version of the Layton games. It's not really it's not really as difficult as those games.
Yes.
It's a lot more forgiving, a lot more friendly.
Got it.
So whatever they're working on with Snack World, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't paid that much attention to the game, but it did look interesting, colorful, and it fits the level 5 mold.
It does, yes.
Personally, I would just like to see them really reinvent the Layton franchise. I would like to see that because that's what's been really working for me as a gamer, and it's been working for them for years. I mean, Layton's popular, capitalize on that, reinvent it, and put it on the Switch.
Yes, I definitely agree. These are, level 5, we just need a developer. Whether we get Yokai Watch or not, I don't want to live without, but I would be able to. However, I wish we wouldn't. I wish we would see some kind of report of some kind. But you're right, it is kind of a weird thing in the West, and that's always been something I've understood. It's not selling well. It's not selling well in the West, but it's very weird in the West in terms of the reception. But so I still definitely agree. We should get Snack World, we should get level 5 games. Layton is a big factor in to all of this, and that's sort of my spiel on that. So next on the list, we're gonna go to more of the apps. Netflix and YouTube apps are still missing. We have Hulu, as well as we have a streaming app, I believe, in the Japanese eShop. But so these are very heavily requested things to see Netflix and YouTube apps on the Switch. No one has really heard anything about them though. We know that they're not impossible. We have Hulu. We have the one in Japan. They just aren't here, and that's frustrating. You know, I want to watch
one of the Nico.
Nico. Thank you. But so we want these. They shouldn't be too difficult if your other system has them. We've gotten them in the past with other Nintendo systems. We want these streaming services. They'd be great for the Switch, being portable and console as well. Any thoughts on Netflix and YouTube?
Well, there was a report last week from the actual president and CEO of Netflix stating that the reason why Netflix hasn't made the transition to the Switch is because Nintendo doesn't really necessarily want it.
Okay.
They basically said that when Nintendo launched the Switch, they had launched it with a focus on games.
Got it.
And to Nintendo, that was the core focus. And the Netflix president said he would like something like that to show up on the Switch in the near future. But as of right now, Nintendo has disallowed it.
Got it. All right. So there's the answer for that. So I would assume that the YouTube is probably in the same boat. However, then that leaves Hulu as the odd one out, actually being on the Switch. Why would they allow Hulu? I guess maybe start a simple, gentle flow. In terms of the streaming world, start with this and slowly ease our way in, so we don't flood the eShop with these streaming services all at once. Maybe once a year is what they might be targeting. Which is kind of a little frustrating, but it's better than nothing, I guess, at the same time. Yeah, so the only other thing that we could really talk about next are the Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem games that we know that are coming. However, we know nothing about them. They just are coming. And so I don't think we have really too much to say on this, do we?
As far as Animal Crossing is concerned, I think Nintendo is sitting kind of pretty right now. Mm-hmm. They just released Animal Crossing Pocket Camp back in November for mobile devices. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of a stopgap for them right now. I think Animal Crossing is going to be a lot more ambitious on the Switch. Mm-hmm. So I think what they're doing is, with the success of this version of Animal Crossing, even though I'm personally not a fan of it, I think because of how well it's done, it gives them a chance to rest on their laurels and give Animal Crossing Switch, more time to gestate.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
As far as Fire Emblem is concerned, I'm a lot more concerned about where Fire Emblem sits currently. It's been a while since a Fire Emblem game has been made for a console.
Yeah.
I think the last one was on the GameCube.
No, it was Wii. There was Radiant Dawn and Radiant. Oh my god. There were two Radiant ones. One, I literally just had Radiant Dawn and Radiant something or other. Oh my god. But one was on GameCube, one was on Wii.
Just see Radiant Dawn.
Oh my god, Fire Emblem on Wii. Because it did exist. Fire Emblem on Wii. So Radiant Dawn was on Wii, and then Radiant something or other was on GameCube, I guess. So Fire Emblem GameCube was Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. That's what it was. So Path of Radiance was on GameCube, and then the sequel to Path of Radiance was on the Wii, Radiant Dawn. That's what I was thinking. Okay. So Radiant Dawn was on Wii, and that was, I believe, the last console Fire Emblem.
All right. Well, that puts us 2 console generations between their last major console release of a Fire Emblem title, and because of that means they missed out on HD development altogether, which was one of the biggest struggles on the Nintendo Wii U. Was that the reason a lot of Nintendo games got delayed was because the development staff did not understand how to develop for HD consoles, and it really hindered them, and it pushed back a lot of the games that they had intended to make for the Wii U right away, like Pikmin and whatnot.
Yes.
which was, I believe, was supposed to be a launch title, and then it come out to the second year.
Yeah.
The same applies for like Donkey Kong and other games. They just got pushed back because development is much harder. And now, Intelligent Systems, the only game they've released on a console is the Paper Mario franchise, which, as pretty as those games are, they're not graphically intensive games. They don't necessarily push the boundaries of high definition.
Got it.
So they have to learn. They have to learn what is, especially for a Fire Emblem game, because those games are supposed to look pretty.
Yes.
They just are.
We've seen them very pretty on the recent 3DS installments, which have gained a lot of popularity as well.
Well, even Fire Emblem Heroes, not Heroes,
Yes. Warriors?
Warriors. Yes, Fire Emblem Warriors looks fantastic. I don't, like I said, I didn't pick that game up, so, but I've watched footage and it looks, it's graphically intensive. It looks good.
Yeah.
They have to make a game now that looks better, because even though Fire Emblem Warriors looks good, it's not done with the traditional Fire Emblem art style.
Agreed.
It's done in that Bandai. I'm sorry, was it Tecmo?
Yeah,
it's done in that Koei Tecmo art style, which it looks good, but it doesn't necessarily look Fire Emblem. And the same applies to Hyrule Warriors. It looks good, but they don't look traditional Zelda.
Agreed.
So now they have to do their version and make it look like Fire Emblem. But I'm not really that worried about it. I do think we'll see it at E3. It just seems weird that we're expecting the game this year and we haven't seen it, but you never know, man. You look at a game like Mario plus Rabbids Kingdoms Battle, and that was released 2 months after it was announced officially.
Got it. Yeah. But so that's pretty much the list of games that might be our MIA, apps that are MIA or might be weird to see, things that might be on your radar, things that might not be. So this is sort of our little recap of that, and I hope you guys liked it. Anything you want to say?
Oh no, man! Like I said, I just thought this was a really interesting topic. Makes great bonus content. So, just an extra thing, just toss into the pile.
Yep.
But look forward to us. We'll be back next week with a standard episode. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So anyway, guys. You guys know to hit me up on Twitter at NyceOne983. You can email me at NyceOne983@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Facebook, Facebook.com/Nintendo Power Zone. If you're a fan of this podcast, you can always download new episodes on iTunes, Google Play Music, and stream new episodes on Stitcher Radio. But if you want to watch us live, you can catch us right here on YouTube, YouTube.com/Nintendo Power Zone.
All right, yep. And likewise, my Twitter is at VKingBlooz, Blooz BLOOZ once again. But thank you guys for listening and watching once again. We will be back next week with another proper episode. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch and listen. All right?
All right, guys. Deuces.